Hello everyone, Shinto Bean here discussing some more Warhammer combat cards. I had a request to do a video ranking cards according to tiers, which doing an entire tier system is a little bit difficult, I think, because how powerful cards are is determined by many factors. Their trait, their stats, their points, Warlord synergy, as well as the card level. But in this video I'm going to talk about what I think are some of the strongest cards in several different categories, as well as some of the overall worst cards. Let me know if you agree or disagree with my choices. So we're going to start off with the Warlords here, and I have all the cards set to max level. Figured it was only fair to have everything on an even playing field. So at the top we have 4 Warlords that I think are very strong, starting with the Parasite of Mortrex. Obviously really great melee option, can deal massive amounts of damage through its explosive special rule. And then the Jackal Alphys is a really great ranged option, increasing the first ranged attack significantly of every one of your cards, as well as having Deadshot for its trait, so you can target down the enemy Warlord. Supreme Commander Gosar has a very strong special rule, enabling you to deploy a lot more cheap bodyguards than you normally could, and then having a very strong endgame. The Tervagon, able to generate those infinite Termagants, of course, you get a lot of value out of that. Now the bottom 3 Warlords are a bit on the weaker side, mainly because their special rules don't scale and are pretty lackluster, like the Swarmlord, that 15% debuff at the end of each turn, really not that impactful. The Warlord itself, of course, is very strong if you have it at a high level, but overall it's just not as good. The regular Gosar has very little health for its cost. I mean, if you just compare like the amount of health it has with even like the Jackal Alphys or the Parasite of Mortrex, yeah, he's not going to last very long. And his special rule, +3 melee each turn, is really not that much. And then the Hive Tyrant, while this might be a decent option for lower level players who are just starting out, 15 damage at the end of each turn, again, is not going to do much when everything is at a higher level. So I've categorized the bodyguards by attack type. So we're going to start by looking at the ranged options, and these are just my top 5 choices for the strongest ranged bodyguards. Number 1, I think, is the Exocrine. Even though it only has 1 trait, it's a rare card, but it just the stats on that thing, the amount of damage output it has, and then how durable it is with those shields. This is like a centerpiece for any ranged deck. The next 2 are actually very similar in cost and function. They have this exact same traits, and really the only difference is that the Ridge Runner has a little more health, while the Harpy has a little more damage output. The Harpy is a newer card, so I don't have it at a high enough level, so unfortunately I can't actually use it myself, but if I did, I would definitely be running it alongside the Ridge Runner. And 4th, I have the Screamer Killer, which has a pretty powerful melee attack with Fear. It is pretty durable. The kind of downside to this one, and the reason I don't really use it in ranked, is because at the lower levels it doesn't really quite have that great damage output or health. At the max level though, it's another story, and I do run this card in pretty much every max level event. And then the Reductus Saboteur is another pretty new card, but it has great damage output, especially with the Big Game Hunter, and then unlocking Barrage at level 9 for a pretty cheap cost. Yeah, just really great stats on that card. And Big Game Hunters combo especially well with the Jackal Alphys. So yeah, these are just the top 5 out of a pretty large collection. Obviously there are a lot of other decent options that you can include in a ranged deck, but we're just going to talk about the top choices here. So for melee, I think the best ones are pretty clear. You got some really strong legendary cards when it comes to melee options. So Death Leaper at number 1, just massive damage output, especially at the max level, and then having Fear makes it very hard to kill. For just 30 points, a really great value. The Broodlord is also a really great option, it has a powerful psychic attack as well. This one, in my collection, I don't have it at a high enough level to be usable, but at max level, I'm always running that thing. The Neurolictor, also relatively new card, but really great stats. The Fear makes it hard to kill, and then the Melee Scout for the secondary trait also will help increase your damage. The Winged Tyranid Prime is not really the greatest card, honestly. At the lower levels, it just doesn't have enough health. But at max level, the thing is pretty crazy, just in the amount of damage you can deal. And helping to take down, you know, like a priority target on the enemy side can be useful. And then we got the Abominant. Now, this one I really want to like more. The Berserk Deathblow combo is a really great set of traits, but it never really seems to deal as much damage as I expect it to. If enemies have just high damage cards that take it down quickly, you don't get as much out of it. Compared to a lot of the other options, it is definitely a powerful card. And of course, Tyranids have so many other melee bodyguards in their roster. There's some fun ones like Old One Eye. You got a number of bodyguards with poison. So yeah, I mix those in with my decks because obviously I don't have all of these 5 cards at a high enough level for them to really be usable. You have to make do with what you have. Moving on to Psychic, at number 1, this is a brand new card that I don't even own at all in my collection. But yeah, the Benefictus is just absolutely crazy. The only dedicated Psyker that is legendary, I believe, that Tyranids have. Just a huge Psychic attack, big game hunter, and fear. It's a deadly combo there. The Neuro Tyrant is another really powerful card, especially once it's unlocked the Psionic Blast, but even without it, yeah, lots of damage and hard to kill. The Maleceptor, this one struggles a little bit at the lower levels because it doesn't really deal that much damage until you get it up pretty high, but yeah, Psionic Blast is a great trait, and then Shield for the secondary is really nice as well. The Magus with Inspiring Presence as its primary trait now, that one just does a lot of damage and it's a really good support card for a Psychic deck. And then in 5th place I have the other Magus with Poison, just because, well, Poison does a pretty good amount of damage. Pretty cheap in terms of points, and I guess the other option is you either run this one or you run like the Zoanthrope or Neurothrope, which have Psychic Link, but I don't really like running those as much because they kind of pressure you into having Psychers on the field at all times, and Tyranids do not have any Psychers with Medicae. So that kind of takes a little wind out of their sails, so I just prefer running the Poison Magus there. And then for support bodyguards, the top 3 are just all cheap Medicae cards. Those are always going to be some of the best ones to include. The Gene Stealer one I don't own. That is a very new card there. But yeah, the Ripper Swarm and the Biophagus, I have one of those or both in pretty much every Tyranid deck I have. In 4th, we've got another new card, which this one I also do not own, Locus. And it's pretty similar to the Tyrant Guard. It deals quite a bit more damage, as you can see, at max level. And it does have regeneration for the secondary, so it's a pretty good one. If you don't have one, then the Tyrant Guard works as well. There are some like really cheap taunt bodyguards as well, like I think maybe 4 and 5 point ones. And depending on what level you have the cards in your collection, those might be a decent option. But I think at the higher levels, those just aren't able to block enough damage to really protect your other cards. So that's kind of where the Tyrant Guard can play a better support role. And then for the worst bodyguards, I have 10 cards in here that I included. And some of them are just really not worth the points at all. Like the Norns, they look really cool. They are fun to play as during those like 400 point battles, but they're really not worth the points at all. Like, I don't think target acquired should be on any 80 point card. It's just not going to be worth it. The Moloch, I mean, that thing can deal a lot of damage. It does have a lot of health, and its points have gone down as well, but I think there are just better options out there. And same goes with some of these cards just have an identity crisis. They don't know if they want to be ranged or melee. Like the Tyrannocyte, the Rock Grinder, the Tyranid Warrior. The Carnifex, like on paper, it might seem good having 2 attack types and Berserk. And maybe for lower level players it might actually be decent, but again, it kind of gets outshadowed by a lot of those other legendaries with dual traits. And then we got some of the cheaper fodder cards. These are some of the less useful ones. I think there are actually like 5 different endless cards now. The ranged Termagant is probably the least useful of them. If you want to include one, you should have the Gargoyle instead. Cheap cards with fear, like the Pure Strain Gene Stealer, really not useful in my book. And then the Node Beast with Inspiring Presence, yeah. Tyranids don't actually have as much inspiring presence as many of the other factions, but just having it on a 5-point card is really not useful. It's just not going to stick around long enough to be of much use. So those are my thoughts on the Tyranid roster. Again, there's a lot of other cards that would have been fun to talk about, but just for the sake of time, we're keeping it simple here. But let me know if you have different ideas about what you think are the strongest cards in the Tyranid roster. But that's it for this one. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.